Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I can assure you that I've heard from many of my constituents who are really concerned about Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, and the corrosive impact it will have on their freedom to use social media, to hear and view online information, and to post user-generated content. Like so many of the intrusive actions undertaken by this government, my constituents simply don't understand why this Liberal government continues to try to fix problems that don't exist. At the end of the day, it comes down to this. Who do you trust? Who do Canadians trust? Is it our Liberal Prime Minister, who's become so notorious for making hundreds of promises that he has no intention of keeping? Do Canadians trust a Liberal government that claims this bill is all about the Broadcasting Act? Or do they trust the many experts who assert that this bill is an attack on our freedom to use the internet and social media? Now, the purported premise of this bill was to ensure that the online streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus meet the Canadian content requirements, similar to those that Canadian broadcasters have to comply with. But this bill does much more than that. It creates a new category of media power to regulate them and to require them to invest in Canadian content, just like the big broadcasters. And that's the rub, Mr. Speaker. What the government refuses to admit, but what has been confirmed time and time again by experts and by stakeholders, is that this Liberal government is for the first time ever inserting itself into the internet space by giving the CRTC, which you know is a group of bureaucrats appointed by this Liberal government, giving them the power to prescribe what Canadians can and cannot see, hear, or post to social media. The CRTC will also have the power to regulate the algorithms which determine what information will appear in your screen bar. The bottom line is this. This legislation will prevent Canadians from seeing and watching content of their own choosing. Instead, Ottawa bureaucrats will control what Canadians can see or watch through streaming services. They will also dictate what you can or cannot post to social media. Now, even worse, Mr. Speaker, Bill C-11 harms Canadian digital content creators in their ability to reach international audiences and achieve global success. Now, our Liberal friends across the way would have you believe that I'm exaggerating, that we Conservatives are exaggerating, that there's nothing to see here, just a benign piece of legislation which makes sure that streaming platforms contribute to Canadian content. But many experts like law professors Michael Geist and Emily Laidlaw, like former CRTC commissioners Timothy Denton and Peter Menzies, and even Canadian author, the icon Margaret Atwood, are all sounding the alarm and suggesting that what's at stake is Canadians' right to be heard. In fact, Margaret Atwood said this bill amounted to creeping totalitarianism. Now think of that term, Mr. Speaker, and what that implies and connotes. Make no mistake, this is a new form of censorship that the Liberal government is engaging in. And our ability to hear, watch, and post what we want on social media is clearly at risk. So again, I ask, who do Canadians trust? Mr. Speaker, the internet and the different social media platforms they've opened up a remarkable opportunity for Canadians to expose their created content to the global marketplace. Right now, they don't have to go through the established artistic gatekeepers, the big broadcasters like Bell Media, like Rogers, the CBC, Chorus Entertainment, that in the past have made it impossible for many Canadian artists and creators to promote their content within the global marketplace. The internet and evolution of social media platforms carved out space for every Canadian to create and promote the product of their imagination without any gatekeepers getting in the way. Each Canadian now has a voice which cannot be silenced by vested interests and corporate gatekeepers. So, consumers certainly don't want this bill, nor do digital creators. In fact, those creators don't want this bill because it has never been easier for producers of online Canadian content, including those from linguistic and cultural backgrounds, to reach a global audience with the content that they wish to showcase. Until now. With Bill C-11, this Liberal government is wresting control away from consumers and giving its bureaucrats the power to tell us, the consumer, what we can and cannot watch, hear, or post. The Liberal government wants to stifle our freedom. And let's not kid ourselves. This is a fight over the freedom to create, to speak, to perform, to imagine, and expose our gifts and creativity to the world. The freedom to be heard and seen around the world. Bill C-11 will take even greater control over our search bars. Instead of directing you to the things you want to view, it will direct you to the things the government and its bureaucrats want you to view. And meanwhile, homegrown talent and content creators right here in Canada will stagnate and lose the opportunity to be judged based on their merit within the global marketplace. Content will be subject to a set of criteria that bureaucrats in Ottawa will use to determine its level of Canadianness. Now, the government, of course, has protested that no, user-generated content won't be compromised. But I ask again, do you trust them? Do you trust these Liberals? This is the same government that promised balanced budgets, electoral reform, greater transparency, yet failed to deliver. In fact, the University of Laval did a study after the 2019 election. How many of the Liberal promises were actually fulfilled? Only 52%, which means almost half of their promises were broken. And that's from the University of Laval. It's the same government that's been embroiled in countless scandals and in ethical failures. So again, I ask, do you trust them when they tell you there's nothing to see here? Don't worry, be happy. So what did the Liberals do? When the Senate inserted a provision in this bill that would have assured Canadians that user-generated content would not be captured, what did they do? They nixed it. They nixed that amendment. Again, I ask, do you trust this Liberal government? They say one thing in public, and then when given an opportunity to stand behind that, they do the exact opposite. Make no mistake, this bill will regulate what can be seen, heard, and posted online. And if the CRTC doesn't do it, you can bet your boots that these Liberals will require YouTube and Facebook to do the job for them. This bill hurts consumers, it hurts creators, and it has even drawn the ire and concern from the provinces. In fact, Quebec has written a letter to this government expressing its concern and asking for more consultations before this bill moves forward. For all these reasons and more, we Conservatives in this House and in the Senate are the only ones to stand in the breach and oppose C-11 in its current form. The Liberal NDP coalition has rejected all attempts to improve the bill, include clarifying the issue of user-generated content. I want to assure Canadians that a future Conservative government will repeal Bill C-11, the censorship bill. So, Mr. Speaker, let me close by saying this. After 8 years of division and conflict, this government has again profoundly failed Canadians by attacking our fundamental right to free speech and by shackling Canadian creators who simply want to expose their ingenuity and creativity to the world, proving again that this Liberal government cannot be trusted. Canadians deserve better.